Welcome to the Game Disc Podcast, where every week we wrap up all the biggest gaming news from last week, tell you what to expect this week, and decide the top 100 games of all time. I'm your host, Simon Esty, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Noah Esty.
And today we're going to be talking about how the gaming industry is slowly dying, but that's okay, because Mario is quickly living. Then, March Madness continues at the Game Disc, where we decide which Resident Evil game is the best, and going on our top 100 games of all time. We will get to all of that, but first, Noah, how are you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad. I was able to wake up a little early today and make myself a really nice breakfast, so yeah, I'm starting off the morning not too bad, but what about you, Simon?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. It's been a crazy kind of couple of days, which is why this episode's going up so late. But other than that, nothing really to complain about. But, yeah, we've got a lot to cover. I know it's the morning for you in Japan, so you've got your job that actually pays you coming up shortly, and we're going to go through all of the Resident Evil games, which might take us a little bit. So let's just get right into it if you're cool with that.
I am as cool with that as a cucumber.
Okay. I think that's cool. I don't know.
I like how out of everything I've ever said in this podcast, that was one of the things that goes onto the list of making you speechless.
Yeah, like I said, it's been a long day. I don't know if I have the mental capacity to handle whatever you're gonna throw at me today, but I'm gonna do my best. But sometimes your best is just not good enough, and that includes the gaming industry. Because the optimistic forecast for gaming spending is expected to be down 2% in 2024. That is the optimistic forecast. So that's best case scenario. The pessimistic forecast shows it'll be down as much as 10%, potentially more. This is all according to Circana analyst Matt Piscatella, who's been doing this a long time. He did say that Helldivers 2 and Palworld are carrying the year so far with strong sales, but they're pretty minuscule compared to Hogwarts Legacy, which absolutely exceeded expectations last year. Piscatella says that this is the most uncertain year since he started doing this job in 2005, but he does expect next year to be much stronger because of the release of a little game called GTA 6, which he also said is quite possibly the most important game to ever be released. And when he says that, he's not saying it like, oh, GTA 6 is going to be the biggest game ever. It's going to be so important. We'll be talking about it forever. He's just saying in terms of what the industry needs, which it needs a little shot in the arm. That's what he means by most important. And obviously a game like GTA 6 is going to give the industry the shot in the arm that it needs. But what do you kind of take of all this, Noah? Should we all just get rid of our PlayStations because there will never be any games to play ever again?
No, I mean, I think that this is just kind of showing that historically even if things are rough, we don't need to. So they're saying that GTA 6 is the most important game of all time, which I don't think there's been a game this important since Turning Point Fall of Liberty. And so it's just one of those... Yeah. So it's one of those things where every market has dips and then it has rises. It's something that Economics 101, you never want to be only rising, because if you only rise, then that means you're going to crash. And so, yeah, I think
you should probably tell that to the CEO of EA and Ubisoft and Microsoft.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that is just really interesting is all of these companies, they constantly want these profits. They're constantly trying to raise stock prices. And the thing is just when you do that, you're just going to crash. And so that's why Netflix, there's something that people talk about. They're like, I don't get how Netflix can constantly be like not making money, but still be such a valued company. It's because of that, even though they are constantly losing money. It's because the way they lose money are to later have them boost money, and that's why they're always a safe bet. So it's like having it down 2% is not the end of the world. Having it down 10%, that's a little bigger deal. But no, it's one of those things that it's not going to really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. And I think that I think, in all honesty, what could be worse is it's kind of like a COVID toilet paper situation where everybody starts panicking, and in an attempt to try to save themselves, that causes a problem. Like, you
No,
know what I mean?
I 100% think you're right on the money. I think the cure, in quotes, is going to be worse than the disease, in that, like I just said, these CEOs are going to see, these numbers down from last year, and that you just can't have. So they're going to make cuts, and like we've kind of been saying the past couple of weeks, when you make these cuts, you're getting rid of the people who actually make video games. Believe it or not, if you want to release video games, you need people who can make them. And if you want to make money and you're a video game publisher, you like to release video games. So I think that that's kind of the issue we're going to see, where, like you said, they're going to make these cuts. And in a couple of years, like I've been saying for the past couple of weeks now, we're just not going to be playing any of these big AAA games. But I mean, I think you're right. I think the industry is fine. I think part of the reason we're down is because we're still so high off of COVID, where video games exploded during COVID because nobody had anywhere else to go or anything else to spend money on. And obviously those numbers weren't sustainable forever because the world would open back up. Spoiler alert, it did open back up. Mm-hmm. So the growth in gaming was smaller than expected, but it was still starting from such a high place. I think, like you said, a slight drop is actually not only pretty natural, but almost expected. But like you said, 10% is when maybe we start to get a little worried. But I feel like part of it is maybe these companies don't know what, maybe they don't have anything coming in the second half of the year, but I don't know if there's ever been a year where we really just have no idea what the second half of the year is going to hold in store. And I think part of that is because the Switch successor was delayed. But again, that's just getting pushed to next year. So maybe we are down pretty low this year. But with the Switch 2, probably a new Mario or Metroid or whatever, alongside GTA 6, I guarantee we will not be down next year. But if, like I said, maybe start getting used to smaller years like this. Things like this might just happen as games get more expensive to make and take longer to develop. There's going to be bigger lulls, and part of that is just going to be a little less money. But was there anything else you kind of wanted to say about this topic?
No, not really. It's just kind of like, I think that the one thing that really is interesting is Palworld and Helldivers are carrying this year. Obviously, Hogwarts Legacy was kind of a flash in the pan. It was people really like Harry Potter. People also really hate Harry Potter. But it is an incredibly profitable franchise, and people were clamoring for a game like that for years. A game where I was like, yeah, I just want to choose my class, fly around the wizarding world, do some spells. And they finally made a game for that, and that's why it sold so well. And I think it's interesting how this year's actually kind of the opposite. Palworld and Helldivers are carrying this year, and they're games that really aren't that big of a deal.
Well, they're smaller games. And exactly. Isn't that kind of what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like we're being proven right in real time.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is interesting, because then it's like, is that going to be just the standard going forward? Like, you have some big games, you got your GTAs, maybe a game based off of a really successful license or IP, but then other than that, it's just kind of these random indie games that just blow up.
Yep. and that's kind of what you and I have both been saying for weeks. And obviously, you're still going to get every the big AAA PlayStation exclusives and games like Avowed and stuff. But yeah, you're probably only going to get a couple of those per year, and then the rest will be filled out with smaller titles. And we're probably going to hear about some of those smaller titles and bigger games at the Summer Game Fest this year, because Mr. Jeff Keighley himself announced that the Summer Game Fest is back. It's returning June 7th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Jeff Keighley is going to host as usual, and he's going to bring all kinds of friends, probably celebrities, and probably Sam Lake, who he's just friends with. It's going to be broadcast live from the YouTube Theater in Hollywood, with public tickets going on sale May 7th at 9 a.m. Pacific. It is invite only for media personnel to run from June 8th to June 10th. This is kind of the replacement for E3 now that E3 is officially dead. So no real surprises that it is coming back, but it is nice for it to be confirmed. And again, the second half of this year is a blank slate. I really can't think of like any game except for Star Wars Outlaws and like Metaphor ReFantazio, which has been announced to be coming out this year but doesn't have a date. Oh, and like Avowed and Indiana Jones. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see more of those, and I'm excited to kind of maybe see what we'll be playing in the second half of this year, since we're probably not playing a Switch 2.
Yeah, I like how poor Xbox, their two big game releases coming out later this year, you were just like, oh yeah, and I guess these games are coming out.
I kind of feel like I don't know, like okay, Avowed, I'm looking forward to Avowed. Yeah. I don't think Indiana Jones is going to come out this year, because Avowed when they just showed it off, they said it's coming fall 2024, and Indiana Jones, they were just like, I don't know, sometime in 2024. It doesn't really get later than fall. Like, I mean, I guess if you're talking about winter in terms of like the Christmas season is winter, maybe. But generally, when they say winter in the video game industry, they mean like the first quarter Christmas of the year. Season. They mean that. Well, they mean the opposite. They mean like if they were if gaming company said this game's coming out in winter, they're talking about like January 2025. They're not talking about December 2024. That they consider as like a fall or a holiday release. They say holiday, and I feel like Indiana Jones, they might be shooting for holiday 2024. I think it's going to get pushed to 2025, because if they were shooting for holiday, why not just say holiday?
Yeah, I just like how you got Meta Fantagio, and you're before like
Avowed.
Yeah, before Avowed and Indiana Jones.
Well, I'm Atlas brained, I guess. I've been playing a lot of Persona, so
that's fair. But
it's just this is the Wii year.
That is, I mean, we got Dragon's Dogma coming out too, which isn't the most.
No, I mean, it is. I mean, in all seriousness, it is like the year of the Japanese developer.
I mean, hasn't that been the case for the past couple of years? In all honesty,
I feel like last year. What did we get last year? Last year we got Star Wars.
Well, last year we got. Nah, last year wasn't. We got Baldur's Gate. We got Spider-Man. Alan Wake 2. We got Spider-Man.
Yeah.
All right, so. It's not that this is the year of Japanese developers. It was last year was the year of non-Japanese developers.
Yeah, that's probably closer. Yeah. But speaking of Japanese developers, or was there anything else you want to say about Summer Game Fest?
Yeah, I just hope that we get a like little, so like Oscars and stuff do little skits, like they'll have John Cena walk out naked.
I don't want Jeff Keighley to do any skits. That is the last thing I need from that man.
Simon, think about it this. A skit between A-list actor Timothy Chalamet and current TikTok star, that Bill Clinton kid.
I should
imagine a skit between those two.
No, because if Jeff Keighley sees Bill Clinton kid again, he might kill him. I don't think there's any like. Just the look on Jeff Keighley's face when those guys crashed the Summer Game Fest last year or whatever they crashed was just pure fury. If he sees Bill Clinton kid, like, oh, I will weep for that child, because he is not long for this earth if he runs into Jeff Keighley.
What if he gets approved and without like Jeff Keighley like knowing about it, and then he hears about it and he like sees the kid like talking to somebody from behind, he goes up, taps him on the shoulder, and just sucker punches him in the face. And then now, that's the story of how Jeff Keighley sucker punched Timothy Chalamet.
That would be pretty good.
Like,
I did think when I saw Timothy Chalamet on stage, I did think it was the Bill Clinton kid. I legitimately thought that. I was like, oh shit, he got on stage again? Oh wait, no, that's just Timothy Chalamet.
It's just Timothy Chalamet.
Who my fiance likes to tell everybody looks like an old Victorian shoe, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but it is a very strange observation. Well, shit. But yeah, Summer Game Fest is going to be pretty cool. Hopefully we learn about some games coming out in the second half of this year, because Nintendo has only dated their couple of games coming out in the first half of this year. I had a better segue, and then I kept talking about the Summer Game Fest, and you brought up Bill Clinton Kid, and
kind of like,
well, I shouldn't have asked you if you wanted to say anything. I should have just kept moving. That was my mistake. Anyway, during Mario Day, Nintendo dated some of their upcoming Switch games, remakes, I guess. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which is a remake of the GameCube RPG, is releasing May 23rd. And Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which is a remake of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, which was for the 3DS, is releasing June 27th. Nintendo also added a couple of games to Nintendo Switch Online, including Dr. Mario, Mario Golf, and Mario Tennis to the Game Boy catalog. They announced a couple new Lego sets, including a Mario Kart one, which I have no idea what that's going to look like, but it's probably going to be remote controlled or something. And finally, they announced a new Super Mario Bros. Movie in development with Illumination, set to release on April 3rd, 2026. So all of these are kind of things we expected. I think a lot of these are cool. I'll probably pick up Thousand Year Door, and I'll probably pass on Luigi's Mansion. Maybe if they do some reworks and I hear good things about it, I'll pick it up, but I'm not like, this is something I need. I'm glad. I think honestly the thing I'm most excited about is the Switch Online games adding Mario Golf and Mario Tennis. I've heard Mario Golf is like a really cool RPG golf simulator. So that's one I've actually wanted to try out for a while. And then the Lego sets are kind of whatever. Same with the movie. No real surprises. We all kind of knew when the movie was coming. I do think it's interesting they don't call it a sequel. They just say a new movie. So who knows? Could be Luigi's Mansion. Could be Donkey Kong. Could be a sequel. Who knows? You excited for these Mario announcements, Noah? Oh, you're mad because we
Simon,
we're talking about Mario again.
Simon, can we pause the recording, please? Can we pause the recording, please? Okay. Is the recording stopped? Is the recording stopped? Is it stopped?
No, only because I know you're gonna yell if I say yes. And the yelling will probably get cut out in the sound. So if you want to yell,
I promise I won't yell. I promise I won't yell. Let's just stop the recording.
Well, let me give you some advice. If you're gonna yell, make it an even yell, because if it's too high or too loud, the software will cut it out.
Okay, I promise I won't yell. I promise I won't yell. Okay.
Okay. It's paused.
Are we paused?
Sure.
Okay, Simon. Do you want me to remind you what I said after our last episode?
Yeah, you said we're never fucking talking about Mario again. But
yeah. So what are we talking about, Simon?
We're talking about Mario.
Yeah, we're talking about Mario. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what happened. Now I'm studying Japanese. Did I accidentally speak Japanese? Did I forget how to speak English, Simon?
No, I just decided to ignore you because Mario is my best and only friend, and so I'm going to keep talking about him. I'm going to keep raising him up because I know that he's raising me up. He's a big fan of this podcast, and I'm going to show him the respect he deserves.
Simon, did you know that fans are trying desperately to beat the last the last uncompleted level in Super Mario Maker before the servers get shut down. Did you hear about that?
I did hear about that. That's
I
rad.
hope they never finish it. I hope that it goes uncompleted for all of history, and every single Mario fan has to live with the fact that they could not acknowledge their idol.
I hope that they do, and due to like their combined efforts, Mario becomes a real person.
Okay, well, he already did when Captain Lou Albano became it. But is it too late to cut the Mario story, or do we have to keep it?
I mean, I think it's a little too late to cut it, but I think that we're good to move on. If you want to just jump right into the feel good story of the week.
No, I'll talk about it. Yeah, let's continue the recording.
Okay, I never actually paused it.
What the hell, dude? Oh god. All right. Well, I guess it's. I mean, it's one of those things.
You want to hate Mario? Hate Mario.
No, it's all right, I'll just say my things for it. Yeah, it's pretty much it's cool that we finally got a Thousand Year Door remake. As a kid, I never really was super into turn-based RPGs, but now I'm starting to kind of get into them a little more. And because this game was a turn-based RPG, it kind of drove me away. So yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in trying it because a lot of people say it's definitely like the best Paper Mario game, and yeah, so that is one I actually am interested in. The rest of them, though, yeah, it's kind of pretty take it or leave it for me. I wasn't a big fan of Luigi's Mansion 2, and I am excited for the new Mario movie. I enjoyed the first one.
Yeah, me too. All right, well, I think that's good enough for Mario. Did you want to go into our feel-good story of the week?
Yes. So, for people who like building stuffed animals and video games, boy, do we got a story for you. So, Nintendo has announced that they will be doing a partnership with Build-A-Bear Workshop, and they're going to be bringing a Pokemon to the store, and that Pokemon is the star Pokemon from Dorkly's Pokemon Rusty series, Bidoof. Bidoof is definitely not the most marketed Pokemon. There are a lot of Pokemon that are more marketed. Obviously, Pikachu, all of the starters, Jigglypuff. In Japan, Quagsire is actually very marketed as well, which is nice. But it's nice that they're getting a Pokemon that is a little underrepresented, and it's just pretty funny that to look at the announcement being like, yep, Bidoof coming to Build-A-Bear Workshop, and it's just Bidoof with his goofy little face. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is pretty cool too. I actually, my fiance built an Eevee at Build-A-Bear, and they're pretty high quality stuff. So that's good for everybody who wants a high quality Bidoof plush.
Mm-hmm.
I like this feel good story. That's fun.
Yeah, I know you do.
Big fan of Bidoof. All right, you ready to get into our March Madness?
Well, actually, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Unless you wanted to talk about any upcoming conventions.
Yeah, I have way more. I don't know why I skipped through literally my entire document. I think I was seeing what I had to talk about, and then I just got to the end of it. But yeah, I have conventions and games to talk about, and actually, I definitely want to talk about the games. So I don't know how I did that. All right, so conventions this week, only 4 of them, but one of them is pretty big. That's going to be PAX East. March 21st to 24th in Boston, Massachusetts. I went to PAX West, last year, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm sure
it was one of them hosted by the Penny Arcade guys.
Yeah, I'm sure that this one will be great too. And then there's NerdCon on March 23rd in Robinson, Illinois.
Ironically, only Chads go there.
I guarantee that's not true. ScottyCon in March 23rd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and AlmaCon.
Oh, well, don't tell those people because they didn't know.
You don't have to say something every time.
I really wasn't planning on it, but I was like,
I thought you
NerdCon?
tried
Okay, I
because
got.
you did it last week too. All
It's
right.
sometimes I do. Sometimes it's like I want to make a joke. So yeah, Scotty doesn't know. Now that I explained the joke, it's
No,
twice as funny.
yeah, that's generally the way it works. And finally, AlmaCon, March 23rd and 24th in Alma, Michigan. That is Alma
Joke not present.
There you go. So yeah, if you're living in any of those, particularly if you're on the East Coast, I could see you making a trek to PAX East because that's a big one and probably going to be pretty fun. Mm-hmm. And then we have quite a few games coming out this week. In fact, one of them has already come out because we were recording this late. Hi-Fi Rush is coming to PS5 today. Then on March 20th, we have Alone in the Dark coming to PC, Xbox, Series X and S, and PS5. On March 21st, we have Horizon Forbidden West coming to PC, and Final Fantasy XIV coming to Xbox. And then finally, the big one, March 22nd, we've got Princess Peach Showtime for the Switch, Dragon's Dogma 2 for the PC, PS5, and Xbox, Rise of Ronin for the PS5, and The Legend of Legacy HD Remastered coming to the PC, Switch, PS5, PS4. The last thing I will say is that for anybody listening to this, I believe the review embargo for Dragon's Dogma 2 goes up on Wednesday, so expect reviews to start rolling in at some point that day.
Yeah, I sure am excited for The Legend of Legacy. That sounds like a good game.
Yeah, could you imagine like those 4 games and somebody's like, I'm gonna pick up Legend of Legacy HD Remastered instead of Rise of Ronin, Dragon's Dogma 2, Princess Peach Showtime, which I don't know how those will be, but I honestly, I think all these games are actually, I think every game, well, not Alone in the Dark, I think every game coming out this week is actually going to be solid at least.
Yeah, I think so too. I bought Hi-Fi Rush already. I'm looking forward to playing it after work today, so yeah.
Cool. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I was actually, when I was prepping this, I was Wario 64 was like, oh, it's available. I was like, cool. And then I totally forgot to talk about it because I was just going to go into our March Madness, which, was there anything else you want to say about any of the games coming out this week?
Not really. Alone in the Dark, I'm intrigued by it. I don't know how good it's going to be, but I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I hope it's
good. Did you play the demo for it?
No, I wanted to. I downloaded it and then I just never got around to it.
Oh, it's all right. The only thing is like the 2 leads are hired by like actual famous people, and so it's kind of weird because everybody speaks with like a southern accent, like a Louisiana accent, except for the 2 leads, which I believe the male lead, played by David Harbour, he is a private eye, so it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense that he doesn't have one if he's not from around there, but I believe the female lead, she is like originally from there, like it's her family, so, and she doesn't have one, so it's kind of like, okay, that takes it out of it. But regardless, that aside, I'm intrigued by it. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I enjoyed the demo.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of interested. I'll probably pick up Princess Peach Showtime if it gets good reviews. I thought the demo was fun, but we'll see. I don't know how great it'll be kind of long term. Dragon's Dogma 2 is the one I'm really looking forward to, but I haven't even started Final Fantasy Rebirth, so I'm not even going to touch that for quite a while. Mm-hmm. All right, now are you ready to go into our March Madness?
I believe so.
All right, so for those who haven't been listening to us, what we've been doing throughout the month of March is we will pick a grouping of games. We've done Metal Gear Solid, and last week we did Mario, and we'll put all the notable games on a bracket, and then Noah and I will compare those 2 games to kind of figure out which game from that franchise is the best. We are doing Resident Evil today. Resident Evil obviously has a lot of spin-offs. We are just doing the mainline games. So I'll just go through what we'll be talking about today. The first matchup is going to be the original Resident Evil versus Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. The second matchup is going to be Remake 3 versus Resident Evil 5. Then we've got the original Resident Evil 2 versus Remake 4. We've got Resident Evil 3 Nemesis versus Resident Evil 0. Oh yeah, that was Remake 3 versus Resident Evil 5. I don't know if I said that. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis for the PS1 versus Resident Evil 0. Resident Evil 4, the original, versus Resident Evil Code Veronica. And then Remake versus Resident Evil 6. That's going to be an easy one. And then Resident Evil Village and Remake 2 both got buys to go into the next round. So I think that's all of them. All the mainline ones, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the Revelation ones, some people kind of consider them main entries. But
I thought about putting them on, but I know that I haven't played them. I don't think you've played them, so it doesn't really matter.
I've played them, but not all of it. And from what I've played, it's like they're fun, but they're not noteworthy enough.
Makes sense. All right, cool. Yeah. So, first matchup, Resident Evil, the original, versus Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. What I realized after we picked this is that you and I already did Biohazard, and we both agreed that it was not going to get on the list of top 100 games of all time because we felt Village was better. So with that in mind, I'm fine with pushing Resident Evil, the original, to the next round.
That's fair. Yeah. We're going to go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the game that really defined the survival horror genre. We've already put some games on the list that defined a genre. This is one of those games, so it's like, yeah, I'm totally cool giving it a buy.
Yeah, and I think it's especially funny because our kind of take on the Biohazard episode was, yeah, it's a good game, but Village does everything better, and Village got a bye to the next round, so it's kind of like we're just skipping that. This one's, I think, a little bit...
This is like the damn Mortal Kombat tournament where it's just everybody's going to get a bye except for one person.
Yeah. All right. Remake 3... Well, technically, 2 people couldn't get a bye. Resident Evil 3 Remake versus Resident Evil 5. This one's a little bit trickier. I think Remake 3 is an overall better game, but I probably had more fun with Resident Evil 5.
I'm going to go with 5. So 5 wasn't the most acclaimed game on the list at the time. I am going to go with 5, though, just because I feel like it's more of a complete package. 3 was good, but it was originally supposed to be DLC for 2, and I feel like that's very visible. Like 2, of course, there was the 2 campaigns. They reshared the environments, but they were separate campaigns. 3 was just one campaign, and then I think
a short one.
Yeah, and I think there's one section where you play as another person, but
it's just
3 was good. 3 was good, but whereas 7 was, we were like, oh, it just 8 did everything that 7 did, but better. I feel like 2 was pretty much everything that 3 did, but better.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it started off as DLC, and it kind of shows. Like, that does not feel like... It basically just used all the same mechanics as 2. Like you said, it's only a couple of hours long. Like, it is short. Whereas 5, a lot of people don't like the co-op, and or they don't like how it... because it kind of doesn't lend itself well to horror. And that's true. Resident Evil 5 is probably the least scary Resident Evil, but it is also probably the one I played through the most because the co-op was a lot of fun. It is just it's a good time. So yeah, I'm fine with moving Resident Evil 5 to the next round. I don't think it matters though, because looking at the games that it's going to be going up against, it's going to get knocked out. We got Resident Evil 2 versus Remake 4.
Oh,
this one sucks.
Oh, this is a tough one.
Yeah. It's kind of like what we've talked about. It's like final form versus importance. Resident Evil 2 is definitely more important than Remake 4. And it's tricky too because of the recency bias. Remake 4 just came out like a year ago. But God, I loved Remake 4. I honestly don't really think there's like anything I would change about that game.
Yeah, and it's... I mean, obviously the one thing is there are a lot of the game is an escort mission.
But it's not even bad.
There was one section I was kind of like, that's not great. I will say, this is tough, because I'm also thinking, like, something that I feel like, so the scene where Leon goes to like the gun store and there's like the guy and his daughter's infected. I feel like that's like a surprisingly modern scene for the game. Like it seems like a scene that when I played 2 remake first, I was like, oh, this was probably a scene that they added. And then like when I saw I was in 2, the original, I was like, that's surprising that like that scene was in that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, two was, like we've said before, 1 kind of set the foundation, and then 2 just build it on it. Just like some of the best games ever made are sequels, and I think Resident Evil 2 definitely kind of lives up to that legacy. It was ahead of its time. It still holds up pretty well today if you can kind of get used to the prefixed camera angles. Like I said, this is a tough one. I really don't know. I know I prefer Resident Evil 4 remake to 2,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
part of that I know is just me liking that style of game better.
Yeah.
I kind of understand that I'm biased, so I'm kind of fine with you. If you think Resident Evil 2 should go on to the next round, I'm not opposed to it.
Well, it is actually it is difficult because this is the thing that is really difficult about the Resident Evil series. There are remakes, and normally I'm like, oh, yeah, original. The original trumps remake because it did more. But the remakes always make the original feel dated. And I... Alright, this is 2... I'm going to go with 4 remake. 2 is great, but it... And I personally don't think 4 remake's going to win, but I feel like 2 isn't important enough as like 1.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I said, I don't think 4 remake's going to take it, but
no, I kind of agree. I'm kind of fine with giving it to 4 too. Another thing I kind of just thought of is I don't see.
Wait, are you giving it to 4 or 2?
I'm giving it to 4.
All right. Yeah. Anyway,
because what I was thinking is, I don't see a world where, let's just assume Resident Evil 2 went to like the final round. I don't see it beating like remake 2. And that's whereas I think
personally,
or
I don't even know if I would. I don't even know if I'd have it beat the original. I don't think I would.
I don't even know if I'd have it beat the original Resident Evil 4.
Oh, I mean, to be fair, like, come on, it's Resident Evil 4.
Exactly. Well, that's my point. I think that Resident Evil 2 is gonna. Resident Evil remake has a better chance of going all the way than 2, and I think that
yes.
I think that kind of proves that it should go into the next round, and so it's going to.
Yep.
This is another one. This one's kind of like tricky, just because there's no obvious one, but I also don't think either of these games are going to get super far. Well, okay, I'll just say it. Whatever game wins this matchup is going to face off against Remake 2, and it's Resident Evil 3 Nemesis and Resident Evil 0. So we can pick the winner, but
I don't
feel super. You think 0 is better than Nemesis?
Yeah, because the big thing that's cool about Nemesis.
I don't disagree.
Nemesis, but I feel like 0 was kind of coming off remake, which defined. I like how both of these are. They're the one after a very important title, and the previous title, like, they're not bad, but the previous title was more noteworthy than them. And I will say 0 just because it was more unique than 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think by that point, like, the PS1 graphics were showing its age. Resident Evil 0 still looked pretty good. I think the dual protagonists that you played both at the same time, or like on the same playthrough at least, was kind of interesting. Yeah, I'll give it to 0, but again, I don't see it beating Remake 2. All right, so Resident Evil 0 is going to go on to the next round. This is another one that I think is pretty easy. Resident Evil 4 versus Resident Evil Code Veronica.
I like Code. I think Code Veronica's out of
it's the most underrated.
I think it's the most underrated, and out of the non-remake games, I believe it's aged the best.
Yeah.
But it's Resident Evil 4. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, Resident Evil 4 is Resident Evil 4 is one of the best ones. I mean, I say that, but then I look at this list and I'm like, oh, actually, there's a lot of Resident Evils that are really good.
Yeah. Although it's not an uncommon belief for Resident Evil 4 to be considered the best.
Yeah, and Code Veronica, while really good, I just don't think it stacks up to. It's and again, it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. I would love a remake of it. I think of all the games that haven't been, I think of all the Resident Evil games, Veronica deserves a remake the most.
I agree, but like I mentioned before, I don't even think it's aged that bad.
No, like, I don't think it has either. But
for me personally, it's like when I played. So I actually played 5 the other day, and something I was like is like, oh man, I can't parry enemies, which felt weird. But when I play the ones like the original remake, Zero, Code Veronica, it's like this game is aged well enough. Like it just feels like a different game. So I would like a Code Veronica remake, but honestly, the game still aged pretty well for me.
Yeah, no, I could see that, but sorry, Veronica, you're just, it's tough to beat 4.
Yeah, I'll give you the runner-up title of aged the best.
And you won that, and you also won most deserving of a remake, which at least in my opinion, I still think it deserves it the most.
Two titles that go completely against each other.
Yeah. I didn't say it needs it. I said it deserves it. And then the final matchup in the first round. This one's going to be so easy. Remake versus 6.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's Remake. Remake is like...
Yeah, of course.
Remake is, I think, it is the final form of the, like, original Resident Evil template.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It
looks so good even today.
And 6 is the game that made Resident Evil change directions because it was so poorly received.
Yeah, which I will give 6 credit. I'll give it credit and then I'll smack it down. I played that whole game with my roommate, and we both were like, we didn't understand why it got bad reviews. But when the game first came out, there was the 3 campaigns, and then when you beat them, you unlocked Ada's campaign, which was solo. So that's what I did. We played through the 3 of them together, and then I played through Ada's campaign, and that's when I realized the game was shit. Because I was like, oh, it's only fun when you're playing with somebody else. So yeah, there's no way 6 is not against 6 is the worst one, and the fact that it's going up against Remake, which has a decent shot of winning. I think.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It was either before or after 6. It was either 6 or 7. There was like a poker game held to determine who would be the next director of Resident Evil.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know.
I remember you telling me that, but I don't know which one it was.
That sounds vaguely familiar. It was probably after, because they were like, we need to do something. All right, so first round done. So in our second round, our quarterfinals, I guess, we've got Resident Evil Village going up against the original Resident Evil. Resident Evil 5 going up against Remake 4. Remake 2 going up against Resident Evil 0. And Resident Evil 4 going up against Remake. I'll tell you what, that's going to be the roughest one, I think. But first, Resident Evil Village versus the original Resident Evil.
I think I gotta go with... It's really the classic thing of what's the better game or what's versus more important game. And
yeah, and you know me, I generally err on the better game. But I think in this case, Village is really good, but I don't think that it's not the best Resident Evil gameplay wise. That goes to either Remake 2 or Remake 4. So at that point, it's just kind of like, what's it doing here? Again, I love Village. I think it's, and I like that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, nothing. I'm just kind of agreeing with you. Like, yeah, it is really good, and I thought that even though some of the bosses' dungeons were given more attention than others, I think that it is still really cool, and the actual like village hub world area is really cool.
Yeah, but I kind of like what we've talked about with like Remake being like the final form of like the original Resident Evil. I kind of think if Resident Evil 9 is this first person, I think that there's still room to grow. Like you said, some of
Mm-hmm.
the areas like Lady Dimitrescu, nothing
Dominatrix.
quite lives up to her area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and 7 kind of had a similar problem where nothing lives up to the Baker House. I will say I
Yeah.
think that the areas in 8 are more consistent
Yes.
than 7, which is why I like it better. But I think there's still room to grow, and I'm hoping Resident Evil 9 is kind of like the final form of that first person new style of Resident Evil. But that's why I have to give it to their OG.
Original.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so 7, the village is cool, the castle is cool, the guest house, is that it? Or is it just the house?
the
Is
guest. I
really
think it is the
cool.
guest house.
Yeah, it's really cool. The swamp is meh. And the
Factory.
what was it? The factory. The factory is cool because in the sense that it's like the first kind of level, traditional level since you've had since the castle, but it's not as good as the castle.
And it's metal.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just like a metal, yeah, like a metal world.
Yeah.
And the boss is cool, but
Although
yeah, I
the
agree with
boss
you.
is cool, and I don't know. I haven't heard anything else from that voice actor, which is a shame because his voice was just like butter. It was
Yeah,
so smooth.
honestly though, all of the performances in that
Ethan
game are kind of
Winters.
all the performances in that game are kind of underrated.
Yeah.
But his, I think, the most. So
Wait,
nobody really.
underrated? Didn't Lady Dimitrescu win Voice Actor of the Year for her performance?
Yeah, but maybe that's why. I guess it's not underrated. She just overshadowed everybody else. But everybody
Yeah.
else was like fantastic. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess not everybody, but everybody got overshadowed by her performance.
Yeah.
All right. So Resident Evil is going to the semifinals. Now we've got Resident Evil 5 and Remake 4. This one's pretty easy. I think it's Remake 4.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I just played 5, and I was like I said, I tried to parry. I was like, oh, can't do that in the game, and Remake 4 just made it.
Yeah, and as much as I like 5, if I had to play through it by myself, I don't think I'd enjoy it much.
Yeah.
I don't think I would enjoy it as much. It is definitely a game that you need to play co-op, and Resident Evil 4 is just almost perfect. So
it is really good.
Another pretty easy one. So all right, we got our first semifinals. It's going to be Resident Evil the OG versus Remake 4. Then we've our next discussion, Remake 2 versus 0. Pretty easy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, 0 is really cool. It does a lot different, but I think that Remake 2 is we're still kind of riding that wave.
We are. I mean, where you just said you think Remake 4 is perfect, and that is built entirely on the foundation of Remake 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And I feel like it almost like it made like it kind of started like Resident Evil 7 kind of like lit the match, like, hey, Resident Evil's good again. But I feel like 2 then poured gasoline on it.
Yeah.
Like 2 is when people really started paying attention to Resident Evil games, and it was like, hey, a new Resident Evil's coming out. That's going to be something you want to check out.
Yeah, well, I feel like, and also the big problem with 7 was the game feels a little clunky, and 2 was kind of like, where we know how to make it horror, but also make it smooth, because that's a problem I had with Alan Wake 2, actually, was I was like, I like this game, but the first one felt a lot more smooth, and that it feels like from 2 going onwards, they all feel a lot more smooth than a lot of the previous titles.
Yeah, I agree, and I honestly think, like you said, I think that was one of the issues I had with Alan Wake. Like at this point, you kind of just expect a survival horror game to feel like Resident Evil 2. Mm-hmm. And that's like a lot of people are like shitting on Silent Hill remake because Bloober's making it. I think it's just not going to feel as good as 2. Like even if it feels good, I don't know if it's going to feel as good as 2. And I don't necessarily, not that Bloober's like this amazing studio. Mm-hmm. I know they have some issues. I just don't know if they even could because it's just like 2 just feels so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2's going on to the semifinals. I don't like this one. Resident Evil 4 versus Remake. I don't know.
4. I gotta get into 4. 4 is
I think
just
I'm leaning towards 4. But I
it's like
really like Remake.
I know, and that's the thing that sucks
I
is like
hate that Remake's getting kicked out so like what I feel like pretty early.
yeah, and it's Remake is great, but it's just 4 is oh god. It's like 4 is just that good where it's like that's the thing. I really like the remake, but it's just Resident Evil 4 is just that good. Like yeah, it's just
No,
so good.
I agree. I think the answer is Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
I think it is. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's also like Resident Evil like Remake is not I would almost say Resident Evil 4 is a more important game too because it kind of was like, hey, if you just put the camera behind the character's shoulder, it works really well.
Well, I mean, it's
And
kind of
now
like well, it's one of those things where it's like the end of the era versus a new beginning. It's like
yeah.
what movie is more important, Avengers Endgame or Spider-Man Far From Okay, that's a bad example. But regardless, it's yeah, it's the thing is it's kind of like okay, here's a better example. What's more important, Resident Evil 6 or Resident Evil 7?
Yeah. No,
It's
you're not wrong.
yeah, like it's no, but in all honesty, one took everything from the previous Resident Evil games and it perfected it. But 4 was them taking it into the future. And
Yeah, they basically were like we can't improve on this anymore. We have to now do something different. And that's what they did.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so now our semifinals is going to be the original Resident Evil versus Remake 4, and then Remake 2 versus the original 4. But first, original Resident Evil versus Remake 4. Um, I'm leaning towards 4.
Yeah, it's as much as I want to say the original, I'm also leaning towards 4 as well. As much as I want to say the original just because of the historical, like I said, they took actually like as much as I want to say well, but then again, the scene with the dogs is super iconic, and it's like there are things like that where
No, I
it's
mean,
like and where it's like
yeah.
I'm kind of like that. So it's one of those things where it's like normally I'm like taking nothing from or making something from nothing deserves more praise, but then I was like, well, Sweet Home also came out, and a lot of that ideas they made in that went to Resident Evil. But I was like, then again, like the transition to 3D really was a big deal. Like the dog scene is iconic. The I guess I'm gonna have to go with
But I feel
4.
like even like with the dog scene, I feel like the first time like the chainsaw guy shows up in 4 is pretty iconic too.
Wait, is
Maybe
this
it's
4
just me.
remake or original?
Oh, you're right. It's 4 remake.
Yeah,
That's rough.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If it was 4 remake, or if it was 4 original, I'd be like, yeah, we're doing 4. Um, but I I think I'm gonna lean towards 4 just because while 1 is so iconic. Well, actually, I don't know. Geez.
I think I want to go with 4 because I think remake obsoleted the
That's
original.
fair. That's a good
And
point. That's a good point.
while 1 is like you there's really there's no reason to go play Resident Evil 1 anymore
Mm.
except for to see kind of how the series started. Because
Yeah,
there is nothing like with sometimes with a remake there might be like, "Oh, I like this thing better. I like how they did it originally better," but I don't think that you could really even say that. Remake
yeah.
adds stuff and it looks better and it plays smoother.
Mhm.
I think the original Resident Evil is just obsoleted.
Yeah, as much as I want to say it, it's fair. And like I said, it's a game that originally was touted as creating survival horror, but Sweet Home also was a game that people also say created survival horror, and I feel like with Street Fighter 2, they really added so much stuff like to the genre, whereas with Resident Evil, as big of a deal as it is, I feel like they took a lot of ideas from Sweet Home and really just
Yeah,
kind of made it into 3D.
I feel like its biggest contribution is just coming up with the term survival horror more than actually creating the genre.
Yeah, I think that that's fair, but
Yeah.
although I
Okay.
think that it also could be the first time people actually were scared. I don't know if they were scared when playing Sweet Home, but I just because
Oh, but there was
unfortunately we
like
don't
I
really
think Clock Tower and stuff.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Clock Tower. Oh jeez, yeah,
Yeah, there was other
yeah,
stuff.
that's true.
All right, Resident Evil 4 remake is going to the final round. This one's gonna be fucking hard too. Remake 2 versus OG 4.
4, I got it. Like, I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I as much as I like 4, or as much as I like Remake 2, 4 was just so well crafted, and it Remake set the foundation for all all current Resident Evil games. 4 set the foundation for Remake.
4 for RE2 remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. We definitely wouldn't have RE2 remake without RE4.
Yeah,
So
and I feel like I feel like this is something that's interesting regarding. So a lot of things that we've talked about is how like they play. A lot of the remakes make the other games feel outdated. I would say playing Resident Evil 4 on the original hardware, like the GameCube, still feels fine. Like the only
yeah,
reason why I feel like the game is dated is because of controllers. Like that's the PS2 version people are like isn't that great, but I never played the Wii version. People say Wii is really good, but GameCube still works fine.
yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I was one of
Yep.
those people who was like, 4 doesn't really need to be remade. They should remake 1 before 4, but I think 4 is great. So
Yeah.
I don't yeah, I'm fine with sending 4 off to the finals.
It's really a shame too because it feels like there's so many great games that like it just feels dirty to dismiss them so easily. But
Yeah,
it's like I mean I
I
think by
think the
this point it's
problem is like 4. Well, Resident Evil has a lot of really good games, but it also has some of the best games ever made.
exactly
that is just a different bar.
exactly yeah. It's got important games, it's got good games, and it has some greatest of all time games.
It's yeah. So now here we come to the final round: Resident Evil 4 remake versus Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, and I am going to say this. I'll just say this, and this is why my answer is going to come so easily. I think that 4 remake had an easier time. It didn't really deal with as much of the heavy hitters, in my opinion. And so I'm just going to say 4 original. Like, look at sorry. Do you mind reminding me what do you besides 4 remake? What are like the big tough ones that it had to go against?
2. I mean, it beat the original. It was definitely part of the easier seed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
And
it had to go. It went up against Village, the OG, and 2. Those were, I think, its biggest competitors. Whereas the original Resident Evil had to go up against Remake 2. Well, but it was also in a bracket with Nemesis and Zero.
but even 0. Hindsight 2020, we probably should have done remake side versus original side, or tried to do that. Regardless,
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. But regardless, I'm going for original. Like remake is the better version of 4, but 4, like as I mentioned before, it's easier to take something from something than something from nothing. 4, there was like 3 different versions of 4 that they scrapped before making this one. And like we mentioned before, the Chainsaw Man's first appearance is iconic. And that opening segment at the village is iconic, and sure, it's in the remake, and remake does improve on a lot of the sections in the game, but the iconic moments come from the original, and they came from nothing.
So I could kind of go either way on this. I'm leaning towards remake, and I'll tell you why. And if you don't think this is a good enough reason, then I'll probably just concede that it should be the original. Most people, myself included, think that the island is the worst part of Resident Evil 4. And I know it's pretty common for a lot of people to just play through the village and the castle, and then just like if they're replaying it, to just stop at the island. And I kind of agree. The island is not very good. It's kind of frustrating. It doesn't feel, it's at that point it's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel great. Remake turned the island into like one of my favorite sections in any video game. Like at that point, you've been playing this game for like 10 hours, you're really good at it, you're like proficient, like you feel like Leon and you were just taking down armies, and you just feel so badass, but it's still tense. I love that section so much. And then same with like the Krauser boss fight is like this intricate like cat and mouse game where you and it all just crescendos with you fighting on like this platform. That whole section is just so good. And that's where like that's what makes it hard, because yeah, like when I think about Resident Evil 4, the original, I'm like, the village, while that whole game is really good, the village is head and shoulders above everything else. And you're right that remake had an easier time, but remake could have just like rested on its laurels, but it didn't. It, I feel like, really looked at what made 4 so good and what didn't work in 4, and it fixed it. And that's what makes this one so hard for me, because while 4 is probably a more important game, again, the remake kind of makes it a little obsolete. And I just think it did so many things like so much better. Mostly just the island.
So I get what you're saying. The reason I disagree is, so your main stance is like, they found out what worked with 4 and what didn't, and refined it, right?
Well, it's not, that's not my only argument. My argument, that is part of it.
That's your main one, right?
It's not so much that, it's more people kind of almost view 4 through rose-tinted glasses, and they don't realize that a quarter of that game is actually not that good.
See, the only thing is, like, the game, though, really, like I mentioned before, it really set the standard for modern Resident Evil. They came out with one, and they really did look at what works in Resident Evil, what can we change, what is, like, should we improve upon, what should we get rid of, and that is the thing that I think this 4 is really good. So they were like, hey, let's try making this game less scary. And then they accidentally made Devil May Cry. And then they were like, okay, let's go back to making it scary, but let's make it more paranormal. And that was the Hookman build, and then they didn't like that one. So then they really settled on 4. And so I feel like I gotta give it to 4 just because it, like I said, they really created this game that is really, really good, and they created it out of nothing. Which now, to be fair, I guess they didn't entirely make it out of nothing because they had 4 previous games, but they really didn't. it was so much more difficult to create, like, take what worked and just completely revamp the game. So that's why I gotta give it to the 4 original.
All right, I'll let you have it. I do disagree because I think remake is better. But yeah, I think I'll just have to give it to you because I don't think that I'll be able to convince you otherwise.
Yeah, it's yeah, like I said, I get where you're going from, but it's one of those things for me. It's like
All I'm
it's
gonna
just
say is it took Resident Evil 4 3 tries, and I mean, still the island sucks. Whereas remake, it just took one. But okay.
well, I mean, it's because they had a template to work from. Like I said, their template was what works in Resident Evil 4, what doesn't. Resident Evil 4's template was what works for the entire franchise, what doesn't.
No, I know. I think I just don't like the idea of leaving remake off. It hurts.
I mean, well, maybe
I think my issue is less. My issue is not so much that remake is getting left off. It's more like I'm. This one's harder, I think, because like when I cut Mario games, I know there's a chance those Mario games could come back.
Mhm.
And like same with Metal Gear.
No, we're never talking about Mario again.
We'll see. Then I'll just have to find somebody else to talk about Mario with.
Yeah, good luck.
But yeah, because everybody hates Mario.
Well, and
but my point
nobody
is,
wants to make a video game podcast.
That's true. Nobody does.
Anyway.
My point is like if Resident Evil 4 gets on this list, remake's not getting on the list. Like that's done.
I wouldn't say that. We could put. I'll tell
We're
you. We're
gonna use 2 spots for Resident Evil 4.
I will say this. We can put Resident Evil 4 Remake on the same list as Kingdom Hearts. And maybe after a year or two, and maybe after I play through 4 again, we can talk about it again. But as of right now, I think we get rid of the recency bias. I'll revisit 4 on a GameCube, and then we can talk about it again. Be like, okay, maybe.
Yeah, revisit it on the GameCube. You can play it on your Switch.
But as I mentioned, Switch version's not as good. The Switch version doesn't hold up as well as the GameCube version because, like I mentioned, it was the thing about Resident Evil 4 is it.
Okay, you're gonna want to stop talking because I know what you're gonna say, and that's just gonna make me feel worse about it.
All right, I'll play it on the Wii.
If your argument is, yeah, it's only good on one platform, I think that shows maybe it's not actually that good.
Well, it's also like,
no, it's fine. I know what you're saying. Yeah. All right, what number are we putting Resident Evil 4 on?
About 40.
I don't feel too bad about that. Hold on a sec. Yeah. I have to add Resident Evil 4 to our consideration first because I think that's more important.
The consideration's more important than the list.
Well, because the consideration deserves to be on this list. All right. Do you want to put it? So 40 is currently taken up by Skyrim. Should it go above or below Skyrim? If Resident Evil's getting on this list, I think it should go before like Skyrim.
Yeah, I agree.
How about 26 is free? That would also put it above Modern Warfare and Metal Gear Solid 3.
Is it above Modern Warfare? Right? Is it? Yeah, I think 26 is fine.
I think that's a good spot for it.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, Resident Evil 4, you are the best, in air quotes, Resident Evil game.
Yeah. Only because Dead Aim wasn't in the running.
Of course.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Don't feel great about it, but it's fine. It's a good game is still getting on the list. Can't complain too much. All right, Noah, before we get out of here, what you've been playing that you want to talk about?
So I've been playing a lot of Armored Core lately. I played it a bit, and then I'm kind of getting back into it. I it's kind of cool that like the different builds can matter for different missions, but I like my melee build just because it's fun. I like running around, boosting around, and my mech dashing and slashing thing. So whenever I'm not allowed to do that, it's a shame. But the game is fun. I also am getting back into Yakuza Like a Dragon 7, or Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon. It's
Oh,
kind of
you
my.
bought that?
It was free on PS Plus a while ago, I believe. Like
Oh,
months ago, over a year, if I'm not mistaken. But this isn't Infinite Wealth. This is.
no, I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of my Japanese studying game where I just turn all the menu settings and all of the like voices into Japanese and just play that way. And then I bought Hi-Fi Rush and I haven't played it yet, but I'm really excited to try it.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't been playing anything new. Still just slowly working my way through Persona 3. I got to like a decent twist in that game, which I didn't really know coming, and that was kind of cool. The characters are really starting to grow on me. I'm on like November, so the game ends in like January.
No, it's March.
The game ends in March.
No, it's March right now.
Okay, I said I'm in November, not the month is November.
Well, I'm in March right now, and I know Japan and America has different times, but it's not that big of a difference.
When I decide to be a weeb, it is November. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I'm living in Japan. I am the weeb, and it's March, you knucklehead.
Okay. In Persona 3, I am on the month of November.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Why didn't you just say that then?
And then I'm playing Final Fantasy VI. At this point, I've kind of just like finishing up a couple of odds and ends before I go into the final dungeon. So I'm hoping to wrap that up this week. And just in time for Princess Peach Showtime. If I decide to play that, which I don't know if that's what I'm going to do, or I might pick up Prince of Persia. A couple of places have had it for pretty cheap, like $20.
Don't you have several other games that you have? Like, don't you have... How far are you in Final Fantasy?
I just said I'm going to finish that up this week.
Oh, gotcha. I misheard you, and I thought you said that you, like, haven't even started Rebirth yet.
Oh, no, you're right. I haven't started Rebirth.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but that's because I'm playing Persona.
I don't think my girlfriend started Rebirth either.
Yeah, I want to, but I'm like, I should probably finish up Rebirth first. And that's... But I view Switch games different, because, like, Switch games I'll get through. Like I'm not going to buy Dragon's Dogma because I have Rebirth, because I'm still playing through Reload. But I don't mind picking up a game on the Switch, because I know eventually I will get through a Switch game, because I can play them on my lunch, and I can play them like in bed. I can just like play them randomly.
See, I'm actually the opposite. I don't complete that many Switch games, whereas
that's because you don't live with a woman.
That's true. I mean, I do mostly play. Yeah, that is different very valid.
Because if my fiance is like watching TV or playing Overwatch, I can just sit on the couch and play Switch next to her.
That's fair.
So I know I will get through any Switch game, and that's why I really don't mind like buying Switch games, even if I have a bit of a backlog, because I've had the console for 7 years and my backlog is like non-existent, and I buy way more Switch games than PlayStation games. But
that's fair.
All right, so that's what I'm playing. Final Fantasy VI, Persona 3 Reload. Hoping when we talk about this on Saturday, I will not be talking about Final Fantasy VI. I will still be talking about Persona, because I'm not that close to beating it. But before we get out of here, Noah, what do you want to plug?
So, do you remember back a couple episodes when I asked you who is your favorite rapper?
Yeah, and you said it couldn't be Pitbull.
Yeah. So you never asked me who my favorite rapper was, Simon.
You told me. You said it was like Mr. Worldwide, and then Pitbull were the other 4 spots.
Well, did I tell you about whom the actual number 1 is?
No, but you told me.
Chosen, bitch! So, Chosen, the hot FX comedy series starring Bobby Moynihan is what I'm plugging in this week's episode. Chosen was a rapper who is now out of prison, and he's ready to get back on top of the rap game. It's like I said, this is the hot FX animated comedy series starring SNL's
animated?
Bobby Moynihan. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And starring...
I don't know. That was an awful plug, by the way. I had no idea what you were talking about for the first, 30 seconds.
Simon, it's Chosen. It was the FX series. Simon?
You can keep saying it's Chosen, the FX series. That doesn't mean anything to me. I know the only thing I know what you're talking about is FX and Bobby Moynihan, which admittedly
and
does
Chosen,
sound wrong.
Bitch!
But I don't know what that is. You can't just keep saying Chosen and expect me to understand what you're talking about.
There's going to be one guy...
Noah, do you know what Frigroom is?
No, what's Frigroom?
It's Frigroom, man. You know, it's Frigroom.
Was it? Well, is it like I said it's an animated comedy series on FX that was premiered on FX, starring Bobby Moynihan.
It's Frigroom, man.
Well, what is Frigroom? Like, is it a show?
It's Frigroom, man.
No, I gave more information than that. You type in Chosen animated comedy series, you get something. You type in Frigroom, you get Perfumes and Colognes magazine, Perfumes Review, and online.
How'd you spell it?
I spelled it Frigam.
No, it's rum. Frigroom.
Oh, Frigroom. Gotcha. So there's Frigem, which is www.friggem, friggem.com. Frigimon, Digimon Encyclopedia. Anagrams of Frigroom on Scrabble, wordhelp.com. Frigimon, Digimon Wiki Fandom. Republican Democrat, 14 August 1858, page 3.
All right, I think that's enough.
Anyway, so watch Chosen. It may have been canceled after only one season back in 2014, but...
Oh, it's old?
Yeah, you never said I need to plug something new.
No, but again, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Like I said, I'm sure there will be one person in the audience. If anybody at any point watches that and is like, oh yeah, I forgot about Chosen. That was a thing that existed, didn't it? It'll all be worth it.
Yeah, they'll be like, yeah, I would sit on my couch, and now that I'm thinking about Chosen, I'm also thinking of Frigroom.
No, they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw advertisements for it when I was watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Man, that's actually probably more accurate. All right, I'm getting us out of here. Hopefully it plays my sound. Yeah, it does. It is playing my sound. Oh no, I lost my document! Frigroom.
Do I need to do it?
No, I got it. Thank you to Pecan Pie on Upbeat for our intro and outro songs. Thank you to Zach Robinson for our logo. If you liked this, you can follow or subscribe and consider leaving a rating and review so more people can find us. You can find other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. They should all be up on YouTube there, so give us a follow or subscribe there. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at gamedisc.podcast@gmail.com, and we will read it on the air. You can send us questions, suggestions, or anything you would like us to see. And with that, we will see you all later this week, because we'll probably I guess it'll be next week, because it's Sunday. A new episode will go up on Sunday. I don't know what we're going to do, but March Madness will continue. Still got 2 more weeks of it. We'll see y'all next week. Goodbye!
Bye.
Frigroom.
Yo, you remember the show Lofi?
What?
The show Lofi. It was an animated comedy show. Bobby Moynihan voiced a drug-dealing narwhal in New York City.
Frigroom.